Loud and clear, we like to be left alone. Kids screaming, dog whining, cat on the throne. Tesco Club Card Chaos, snacks hit the floor. The Antisocial Podcast, your headphone escape. Decompress, chaos you'll adore.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, honestly, this is kind of a chaotic entry point, but I'm glad you've made it. This is the show where we unpack life's weird little contradictions, overanalyse things that probably didn't need analysing, and somehow make it through situations that our brain had already declared fatal. So if that sounds like your kind of chaos, hit follow and stick around. It only gets stranger from here. Before we get into today's topic, a little life update because, well, I've been quiet, haven't I? I took a 2-week break. Unplanned, slightly accidental, but very necessary. I've just been tired, like that deep, can't even pretend to be productive tired. So I stepped back for a little bit, had a breather, did the bare minimum, and now, well, we're back to business. Apologies for disappearing slightly, but honestly, sometimes you just need to stop for a minute and reset. But in true life fashion, even during a break, life did not relax. We had hospital appointments, we had the usual toddler carnage, non-stop, slightly feral, high-energy chaos, and we went to Badminton Horse Trials. Now, I'd never been before, didn't really know what to expect. I thought, horses, bit of grass, nice calm day. But no, it's basically a full-scale event. Food courts, fairground vibes, shops everywhere, horse events going on constantly. It's massive. And when I say massive, I mean miles of walking, which would have been fine if we'd brought a pushchair. For me, not the toddler, because, to be fair, the kid did really well. We only had one mini breakdown the entire day, which, considering the walking, the noise, the overstimulation, and the tiredness, is honestly pretty impressive. Then came the food situation. He decided he wanted a hot dog. Simple request. No. We searched everywhere, and I mean everywhere. At one point, I was genuinely panicking because somehow there were food stalls everywhere I looked, except an actual hot dog stall. Finally, anyway, we found one, and I'm pretty sure it was the poshest hot dog he's ever had. It was £10. 10! And he didn't even eat the bread. But to be fair, he's such a picky eater that honestly, I was grateful he ate the sausage. And then obviously after the hot dog, I turned around and to my surprise, there he was, my villain. The ice cream man. Because somehow, he had followed me here. Again, different place, different day, same man appearing out of nowhere with that little ice cream van, like he'd been tracking my location the entire time. At this point, I'm convinced he's less of a vendor and more of a recurring side character in my life. After that, the tiny human was absolutely wired, running around like a feral gremlin, living his best chaotic life, until, again, he tripped. And this time, it wasn't just a little stumble. No, this child fully launched himself forward like his body had been ejected from an aircraft, straight into the back of a woman sitting next to us, head first. I'm talking full contact, a proper accidental WWE move. The sound alone took years off my life. He nearly gave himself whiplash, and she turned around with the exact expression of someone deciding whether they're allowed to fight a child in public. Honestly, fair enough. So yeah, that was a moment. Anyway, by the end of the day, we head back to the car, which, by the way, felt like a marathon away. And then the journey home, 2.5 hours, he cried the entire way, the whole way. At one point, I was very close to joining in. So yeah, that was just this weekend. But we're back now, so let's take it back to last weekend, because apparently my life enjoys pacing itself like a sitcom written by stress. And after everything that happened, I realised there was only one possible topic for today: hospital procedures. The full psychological Olympic event that happens before when you have anxiety. Because if you'd listened to one of my earlier episodes, you'll know I mentioned a hospital appointment I'd been waiting on for ages. Well, the appointment finally arrived. And this is another reason to why I've been not very active the past couple of weeks, because the anxiety come down is another topic of its own. So after a full year of me pretending it simply did not exist, honestly, I treated that referral like it was an unpaid parking fine, ignored it completely and hoped eventually it would disappear on its own. However, it did not. And that's the thing with anxiety, isn't it? You can know something is coming for an entire year and still somehow feel personally attacked when it arrives. Because emotionally, I was never prepared. Then came the phone call. Hello, we'd like to book you in. Immediately, my heart rate's up, my palms are sweating, bowels negotiating. Anxiety doesn't do subtle. It goes from 0 to a full disaster movie in under 6 seconds. And again, what's wild is anxiety symptoms can actually mimic danger. Racing heart, dizziness, chest tightness, shaking, nausea. So naturally, your anxious brain goes, well, this confirms it, we're dying, which is not helpful. As this is all going on, she then says, we can get you in this Thursday. Thursday? It's Monday, right? I'm on the phone and it's Monday. And the nurse on the phone is trying to book me in for this Thursday? Absolutely not. This is not enough emotional notice. I need at least several business months. Yes, I'd waited a year, but apparently 3 days was unacceptable because anxiety doesn't care about logic. You can wait forever for something, but when it becomes real, your brain acts like you've been selected for a gladiator tournament. So I pushed it back and got the following Monday, which in theory gave me more time. In practice, more time thinking about how much I did not want to do it. Because anxious people don't prepare, we rehearse catastrophe. We mentally storyboard every possible disaster like we're pitching a streaming series. By Sunday, I'd imagined every scenario except the actual likely one. And then came the fasting. No food for over 24 hours. Now, combined anxiety with hunger and sleep deprivation. I'm not a functioning adult anymore. I'm a patient who should not be left alone with Google or my own thoughts. By Monday afternoon, I was weak, emotional, and personally offended by the existence of sandwiches. So I arrive at the hospital with my wife, because if I'm spiralling, I'd like a support act. Anyway, they call me in, and then enters the nurse. Now, every workplace has one. That one person who is technically doing their job, but with the emotional warmth of a laminated signature. Very old school, very matter of fact. The kind of person who could announce a meteor strike in the same tone as asking if you'd like a biscuit. So I'm visibly anxious, like trembling, probably radiating fear. So I ask if my wife can come in while I get ready. No. Just no. No cushioning, no sympathy. A no so immediate it felt rehearsed. Then she takes me in and starts the pre-op conversation. Now, I understand they legally have to explain risks. Of course they do. But there's a difference between informed consent and sounding like you're narrating a medical horror film. She starts listing worst-case scenarios, internal bleeding, complications, transfer to another hospital, things going wrong. And I'm sat there thinking, why does this sound like the trailer for my own dramatic exit? I came in for what I believed was routine. My anxiety heard, this is highly experimental and survival is optional. That's what anxiety does. It takes a 1% chance and treats it like it's fate. So when she left me to change into my lovely hospital gown, designed, I assume, by someone with a grudge against dignity, I had a panic attack. A full one, because I'd gone from nervous to entirely convinced I was one step away from catastrophe. Then another nurse came in to do my cannula, and I just broke down, because I'd already been anxious. Then I'd had every horrible possibility placed directly into my overreactive brain. And now someone was approaching me with a needle while I was emotionally unravelling in a backless garment. Not ideal. And the weird thing about anxiety is you know you're already spiralling. You know it's excessive, but you can't stop it. It's like being trapped in a room with someone shouting terrible predictions, and that someone is your own nervous system. Anyway, they take me through, and honestly, it was nowhere near as bad as I imagined. Not even close. This huge ordeal I'd built into some impossible event took 20 minutes. 20. She said an hour. I'd mentally prepared for some internal bleeding and a hospital transfer. It was basically an advert break. The doctor looked at me and said my heart looked like it was going to beat out my chest. And I thought, yeah, I'm aware. Your colleague has verbally buried me alive. And then I had gas in air for the first time ever. And wow, why did nobody mention the dry mouth? I was trying to speak and sounding like I'd crawl through a desert. Couldn't form words. Just there, confused, dehydrated and deeply committed to surviving. But I got through it. And the reality was far less dramatic than the version anxiety had created. Because anxiety thrives in uncertainty. It fills every blank space with worst-case scenarios. It mistakes possibility for probability. And it convinces you that fear equals danger. But it doesn't. Fear is just your nervous system sounding the alarm. It doesn't mean that the threat is real. It just means your body thinks it is. Now here's the bit nobody really talks about. The anxiety come down. Because once it's over, and once you're safe, once the thing you were terrified of has actually finished, your body doesn't just politely switch itself off like a light. well, for me anyway, it's still running on emergency settings for days after. The adrenaline, the hyper alert mode, all of it just quietly doing overtime in the background. So when the moment passes, you don't immediately feel relieved. You feel drained, like your whole system has just been holding its breath and only now remembers it needs to breathe again. And I don't think this gets talked about enough because it's not the dramatic part, it's the quiet part afterwards, where you suddenly realise how much tension you were carrying without even noticing. For me, I ended up needing the next day off, not because anything went wrong, but because my body just needed to recover from the stress of anticipating everything. And honestly, I think a lot of people will recognise this. The weird post-stress crash where you're technically safe, but you feel weirdly fragile anyway. A bit tired, a bit emotional, a bit slow, like your brain has used up all its battery life on worry and is still now running on 3% and optimism. Even normal things feel like a bit of an effort. Sounds are louder, decisions feel heavier, your system just wants to pause. And I think that's the key thing. It's not weakness, it's just what happens when your body has been in protect mode for too long and it finally gets permission to stop. Everything drops at once. And then eventually you realise you're hungry. And not just normal hungry, the kind of hungry that feels like you could emotionally bond with a sandwich. For me, the recovery moment was honestly a Subway. And I know, that sounds ridiculous, but I hadn't eaten for 24 hours, and I was starving. After over 24 hours without food, that sandwich tasted like enlightenment. I saw colours differently. Every bite was spiritual. I never respected a footlong more. Nothing compares to a post-procedure Subway when you've been fasting and fearing death. That was my reward. Survival and a sandwich. So yeah, if you're facing something medical and your anxiety is turning into a full-scale disaster before it's even happened, just know this. Your brain is not a relatable narrator in those moments. It is dramatic, it is convincing, and it absolutely deserves less creative control. The build-up is often worse than the event, and the anticipation can be harder than the reality. And the stories anxiety tells are rarely the truth. So give yourself credit for showing up, for doing the hard things scared, for surviving both the situation and your own thoughts. That takes more strength than people realise. And if all fails, promise yourself a really good sandwich afterwards. Thanks for listening, and remember, don't Google your symptoms at 2 a.m. That's where common sense goes to die. See you in the next episode. Until then, leave me alone.
That's a wrap. You've had your fix. The Antisocial Podcast. Catch the next mix. Stay chill, stay weird, and out of the crowd. We'll be back soon, talking loud. Well, kinda loud. La 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 la.